You know, A Very Supernatural Christmas was probably more than any other episode, the episode I really wanted to do this year. I found the idea as I was sort of doing research between seasons of just different monsters and whatnot. Like I found these urban legends about this Anti-Claus, and that rang more loud and clear to me as an episode than almost any other ghost story I came across over that summer. And I said, that's an episode we have to do, our Christmas episode. We wanted to deliver like the most violent, brutal, holiday episode ever. And from the beginning, I mean, really, when we talk about what, you know, when I say like we pick certain scenes and that's why we do these episodes, in the Christmas episode, we had 3 scenes within 5 minutes that we had to do. You know, we had the teaser where Santa gets like wrenched up the chimney, and we said we have to do that. That's so awesome. Like in the first 5 minutes of the episode, we brutally slaughter Santa Claus. Like, how's that, kiddies? Like, we're killing Santa Claus. Thanks for watching. And then where the monster comes to the house and basically like goes up. I mean, stop to think about this. Like, goes up in front of a little, like a 7-year-old boy. Goes up in front of him, goes up to his parents' room, beats his dad, puts him in a leather sack, drags him down the stairs, whacks the sack and kills the dad in front of a 6-year-old who's watching, and then goes and eats one of the kids' cookies. And we were like, that rules! Like, that's the greatest thing ever, and it's so scary and weird. And every so often my family calls me to say, what's wrong with you? And that was one of the scenes in season 3 that they called me to say, what's wrong with you? Very early on in the process, I said, I want the boys to kill someone with a Christmas tree. And I want them to take all the accoutrements of Christmas and brutally slaughter someone with them. You know, and so we had that, but then it was really important to us to have, or to me anyway, that to have, like, you have all this like darkness and then to put on the trappings of like a really cheery traditional Christmas special, which are some of my favorite touches to that episode. Like, for instance, like the spinning special little title that opens it, is from CBS in the 80s. And I mean, I've rarely been so tenacious about anything in Supernatural as I have been with this friggin' title, because I so wanted it on the show. So they defined it, and then they had to find who wrote the music for it. But no one even knew who wrote the music for it, because it's like, 20 years old, and no one even knew where it came from and where it existed and how to recreate it. And finally, we got the permission to do it. And it's like my favorite little moment that it just opens the same way a Christmas special opens. I just love that little part of it. Dean's dream was he was basically going to be dreaming an 80s horror movie, that he was going to wake up and the film stock was going to kind of be 80s, and the original version, like this girl in leg warmers was going to run up and be like, oh my God, and then help me, and then Jason was going to come out, and he was going to have the machete and the hockey mask and the whole thing. And we found out, I think about 3 days before shooting, that the movie studio that shall remain nameless thought they had the rights to the character, and it turns out they didn't. And they called and they said, sorry, we don't have the rights after all. And we said, we're 3 days away from shooting. Like, we've made our Jason. Like, it's perfect. We made this perfect facsimile. I made everyone watch Friday the 13th Part 4. And, and they're like, sorry. And they kind of shrug. And we're like, we don't even know what to do. And then we had this notion that if, Sam's dream, and illogical, I don't think he really loves Bella or anything, but I think if Sam's dream is just a sex dream about Bella, and that Sam underneath his really nice guy exterior is basically a horn dog. So he's horny, and so he dreamt about, whatever girl is basically passing through the episode. So we like the idea that Dean being the opposite of that we said, well, if Dean's got a secret, Dean's secret is he wants a really normal family, and then we started thinking about the characters from The Kids Are All Right. And we wrote a scene that, while isn't as maybe funny or surprising as Jason coming out, was more illuminating the character. So in a way, I'm actually happier that that happened. And it's kind of really heartbreaking for me. Like, it wasn't a funny scene, but it became really heartbreaking. You have this character who is telling Dean, let's go to, let's have this picnic and go pick up Ben from baseball. And it's just the most suburban minivan life ever. And that's what he wants. And his embarrassment that Sam is watching it. And you get the sense he's had this dream all the time, but he's embarrassed, and no, I've never had this dream before. It just really kind of breaks your heart in the middle of sort of this fast-moving episode. And then, you know, as a second part, you know, we have this big scene where Dean confronts himself. This was like the big episode for us, that where like Dean has this really big turning point, where he basically learns a little self-esteem. I mean, if we had an arc for Dean this season, it would be, you know, Dean begins the season with such a really crappy view of his own self-worth, and that he ends the season with more self-respect, like he's really matured that way. And we spoke a lot about, well, where did this begin, and where did this come from Dean? And the answer was, it came from his dad. I mean, it's his dad that is the reason he was the way he was. And so in the initial conception, we said, this is the episode we bring back Jeffrey Dean Morgan. And he comes into a room, and waiting there is Dad. And Dad starts like browbeating him. And that was our first version. But we checked, and Jeffrey was unavailable because he was filming Watchmen, and he's a definitely busy guy, and so we couldn't have him. So we're like, okay, so then what do we do? And then we realized that the way to do it was the junkyard scene from Superman 3, where it's like Dean on Dean. And if you see, like, it's Dean on Dean, but the conversation's still about Dad, which is like the original holdover. Like, it's really about his emotion from Dad, but the only way to make sense would be sort of insecure, awful, angsty Dean talking to our hero Dean, and it's sort of like the bad Dean symbolizes everything that Dean hates about himself, and he finally gets to kill him. And so it worked out, and Jensen made the scene. I mean, you know, he just so rocked it, and like you can so tell. I mean, if you look, he's playing different facets of the same character, and at any given moment, you know which one's which, even though they're played by the same guy. And you know, that's no easy feat, and one of my favorite parts of the episode for sure.